Hi, am I coming through?
Hey, there you are. All right, cool, man. You made it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're working out just fine.
Thanks for working out the scheduling and stuff. I know it's hard these days. We're all so busy.
Yeah, there's always something going on, but happy to make time and speak with you and such. Just want to make sure
Awesome.
that I close my Facebook here, so because that has a tendency to try to chime or people messaging me and such. So
Oh, yeah, yeah. I just closed down my Outlook for the same reason, so it doesn't beep.
do that. Actually, I don't think I need. Yeah, okay, there we go. So everything is coming through okay.
Yep, it sounds good. Coast is clear.
Good deals.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Frater Ashen Chassan. So is that how you pronounce your name, Ashen Chassan?
Yeah, Frater Ashen Chassan.
Oh, Ashen Chassan. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I mean, if
So
it's
it's
more the Hebrew kind of sound is Ashin Chassan, but it's a little bit, it sounds funny to most Americans. So Ashin Chassan is pretty simple.
so is that the name you were born with?
No, that's Ashin is a magical name that one of my teachers gave me when I was still a teenager.
Wow.
One of the first people I started learning some things from. It was kind of bestowed upon me. It was interesting, the
Yeah.
connotations. And then Jasan's a name of an angel of the air that one of the first beings I got well acquainted with, that I adopted that name as well. So they're both just kind of like magically attributed names, I guess you could say.
Exciting. Wow, that is really cool, man. Nice background.
Oh,
Appropriate.
thank you. Yeah, I'm currently hosting a Alma Del course. I have three um, Facebook group
Mhm.
magical workshops that I'm running, and I do live videos, and I get on there and instruct and lecture and such. And it's just a tapestry that I have in my office for right now.
Gorgeous. I mean, it looks like the sign, the zodiac there, but there's also a jellyfish in there. Is there a jellyfish sign that's unknown to
Oh
man
yeah,
that you're
no,
disclosing?
it's Aquarius is a pot, but it does look like a
Oh, I
jelly.
see. Oh, it's a pod. Right. Got it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So cool, man. So yeah, I've listened to a couple of interviews with you online and really enjoyed them. There was one on the glitch bottle, and then I think there was some Asian woman who has a podcast. We interviewed you too. That was pretty cool. That was a fun one to watch. And I've been recently exploring some of the magical side of things, I guess you could say. But I'm very much a beginner. So I was just looking forward to chatting with you and getting a chance to pick your brain and learn some. And at the same time, we do a podcast, so we can kill two birds with one stone.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So, Frater Ashen Chassan, correct me again. I want to be
Yeah. Ashin Chassan is fine.
Ashen Chassan. Okay. Frater Ashen Chassan. Or Ashen.
Yep. And
All
that
right.
works.
Cool. Um, So I usually start by like learning a little bit more about. I know you're not a Mason technically, although you've been invited to lodges, and you probably know more about Masonry than most Masons. But this show is not exclusive to Masons, even though the name is Just Masons. But it can be interpreted in different ways, like just and upright Masons, and
There you go.
righteous and noble. And I also thought about putting like a little cursive "not Just Masons," like on the upper left of the word or something like, and change the logo. That might be fun to do at some point in honor of this interview. Um, but yeah, I want to learn a little bit about your background. Like, what's your path? I mean, have you always been into different kind of stuff since childhood, a curious mind? What led you to all of your interest in esoterica and then finally into magic?
Well, it started out really kind of in my family, and when we moved out to Colorado is when I first started studying magic. But I guess you could say that growing up, had paranormal experiences ever since I was a child. My parents like to tell me a lot of stories of well, a lot of things that happened. Something I would see ladies in the closet that would come visit me, and I would, pull my mom in there to show her, and then I couldn't figure out why she wasn't there anymore. And my mother always said it gave her the spooks. And but we would have we would have things occur, and even my parents, when I lived in California until I was about 13, but they had a few interesting experiences themselves, even before I was born. They like to tell me about some paranormal things that were going on, and it seems that both sides of my family, from my grandparents' side on, had special gifts. They had crazy intuition. They could predict when things were going on with one another, so on and so forth. But no trained magicians, as far as I'm aware. I'm the first in that lineage. But it was neat having both sides of my folks have relatives and then themselves have these gifts. And I got interested in magic when we moved out to Colorado, because we started having like some pretty serious hunting phenomenon, and it would be things that the whole family would see, and even friends of the family if they happened to come over at certain times. But it got to the point where my father thought, somebody was breaking in the house. He would see somebody in the house, and there ended up being nobody there, but things would fly across the room, and we grew up pretty basic, just Methodist Christian family, but there wasn't a lot of information or people that you could talk to about paranormal things back then. I think Unsolved Mysteries was as close as it came to the show back in the day, and I started looking into magic. For one, curious because these things were going on, and anything that I could read that involved the paranormal, I was interested in, so I could learn possibly more about it, so it would be less frightening. And then
so when did you start reading about paranormal stuff? At what age were you?
I was probably about 13, 14 when
Okay.
I first started looking into this, and I think it was some time.
And now you're 25, right?
Yeah, I wish. It'd be great. Yeah, 40 now, but yeah. So I began learning more about the paranormal world, and I found that I had a knack for certain things too. I began hypnotizing people when I was 14, just by reading a paragraph out of a book, and I was like, oh, let me try this out. And
Oh, wow.
I hypnotized a friend, and he held his arm out for like an hour because I thought he was just playing along, but I'm like, well, his arm will get tired eventually. But it didn't move for an hour. I was like, wow, this is amazing stuff. And at first my parents were pretty freaked out, worried, and told me not to mess with it. But when I hypnotized them, they liked it so much that when I did turn 18, they paid for my internship and certification to become a hypnotherapist. I was like the youngest in Colorado.
Oh, okay.
And I just seemed to have some knack for some unusual things. And the more I learned about it, even when we'd have these haunting experiences in the house, it felt like I could, do something about it and everything. I learned about cleansing the area and such, and it all began pretty new agey, I guess you could say, with the materials that were available. And from there, I got very interested in different philosophies, different religions. I got very interested in Celtic Druidism and my Irish roots, and that's been a big passion of mine for a while. And I kind of stepped back from the church, and I focused on paganism, because we had a house built kind of in the forest, and I was always out there, and I love nature and being out in the woods. And
You probably like my background then, right?
yeah, exactly.
There?
Yeah, it's pretty tropical looking. It's nice.
Yeah.
We're very much in the high forests and mountains, but yeah, it's definitely a place I'd like to be and continue to enjoy. But it wasn't until I moved out at 18, 19 years old from my folks' house that I got into classical magic and what is now kind of coined Solomonic Magic, and really looking into the grimoires, the books of classical magic that have these instructions and recipes to evoke spirits. And I was very much drawn to that, of being able to see a spirit face to face, not spontaneously where I was just reacting to it, and something amazing would happen, it would be gone, but where a spirit could arrive and I could converse and learn things, and be able to accomplish different things in my life. So that became a huge passion that's continued on until today. So.
Wow. I guess, it'd be good to sort of understand better what magic really is. And you mentioned Solomonic magic, and I've heard people refer to magic as ceremonial magic. And then there are people that, get freaked out when you even mention the term magic, like that must be evil. What are you doing? How do you describe the work you do? I assume you describe it as Solomonic magic, but I'd love to hear from you. And then after that, we can talk a little bit about these perceptions that magic is bad.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, magic, especially in the West, but it's in the East as well. But a good way to understand it is everything is through correspondences. That's relating to that, and correspondences a lot of times in an occult way, which is to say a somewhat hidden way that the exact nature of why certain plants or herbs should relate to various stars in our galaxy or different powers. It becomes a study of really recognizing which things are attuned to other things. And magicians or magic is learning a way either through all these instructions, sometimes through intuition and through experimentations about being able to affect causalities through an intentional manipulation of correspondences. And how those are brought about is quite a wide topic when we're talking about magic. There's things like some sympathetic magic, which really goes down on that, or folk magic, where you simply can quote unquote do a spell or a procedure that entices a certain correspondent to affect something else. An example would be, I guess, in folk, sort of magic, that if you're using grave dirt, or something that's related to the dead, it might have Saturnian or Saturn correspondences, but if a person realized that or not, it wouldn't matter if they applied it to something that would encourage things to base out, things to cease affecting a certain person. This would be kind of a sympathetic work of correspondences to cause something to happen. And a really good story about this, without going too far, is that a lot of times people can almost do incidental magic. My father, who has these gifts, did magic, but he didn't really see it that way. When he was young, it's a little gross, but his hand got covered with all of these warts. It was a breakout. It was horrible. And the doctors came over back in those days, and they knew they were going to have to burn him off. And my dad was terrified about having wart burned off his hand. It sounded very painful.
Right.
And the doctor told him at his house, was like, well, there's an old wives' tale that, if you take a potato and cut it in half on a full moon, and you put the juice all over your hand, and then bury it on the full moon, then that used to take warts away. But the doctor told my grandmother, his mother, that he basically said that just to ease his mind, because he was kind of panicking at that point, and just didn't want him to fret until the day of the operation. Sure. But incidentally, my father did the procedure, and I think it was in 3 days, his hand was completely free of warts. And wow. The doctor couldn't understand. He's like, that doesn't really work. That's not supposed to work. I've never really seen that working. And there's no direct medical explanation. There, psychologically, I went to school for psychology and philosophy and anthropology, and there's some stabs at that. There's a lot of mind over matter, but the simple effect is it's a magical procedure that happened to work, even though there's a lot of occult virtues there, and there are some sympathetic components to what he was trying to do to get rid of something. And I think it was on the new moon, not the full moon, going in down there. But that's just an example.
Right. So, talking about this idea of sympathetic magic and correspondences, because I know you can do certain rituals for the sun, for example, or maybe the Archangel Raphael, that correspond to Tiferet and the Kabbalah. And there are certain, colors and, other things you can use, scents and such, that are supposed to correspond to a particular angel. What's going on there? I mean, do these angels actually like certain colors and certain smells, and they actually come attracted to it, like with a hunger, or what?
Right. Well, it's kind of interesting because my second book, my latest book, is called Gateways Through Light and Shadow, where I wrote a book previously using a procedure called drawing spirits into crystals that's meant to evoke the archangels. And I did this out of curiosity to see if I could make it happen, and it was very successful. The second book was an attempt to see if somebody else could see and experience what I was experiencing, and not just having it for me. And it ended up being a huge, huge book. It's a very big book of a very close friend of mine, and I going through these procedures and asking the angels these type of questions. For instance, kind of something you were hitting on is within the grimoires and the magical traditions, the archangel associated with the sun can switch depending. It's either Michael or Raphael, depending on the system, depending on the grimoire, or what's being talked about. And I asked the angels specifically, about this. I believe I was talking to Archangel Raphael, and I'd have to read to get his exact response, but basically the information that we got back is that the archangels themselves are not fixed into associating with a certain planet in the sense of it's established, and because we say so, or because the wise rabbi is associated, or whenever it began. It's just something that they recognize, and it's a correspondence that they can relate to us back to through this correspondence of the philosophy surrounding what are the aspects of the sun, for instance, and which parts of these archangels can relate to that back, so that the communication that we're seeking from them travels along those lines. So it's not so much that the archangels are fixed into adhering to a certain kind of color or a day or an hour or these kind of things. It's kind of the reverse. The human or the magician goes back along these lines, because that conduit to a very, very expansive and almost indiscernible being, a very powerful being, we have to relate to it in a specific way, or at least one aspect of it that becomes useful, that becomes practical. And that's usually what magical operations are about, is we're seeking wisdom and such, yes, but we're usually contacting angels and beings for practical ends. We need to cause something, we need to change something, we need to enact a certain kind of force within our world. And the way we do that is following a certain line of established conduits that have been established to these beings, and work with them on that level, if that makes sense.
It does. Do you think that it could be that some of these correspondences that we use to have contact might be more about putting our own state of mind in a certain condition of receptivity to that contact? Like it's more about affecting us and putting us in the right mood to contact them, or it's a combination of the two? Or
in some ways, but there are the spirits. The archangels are interesting, where their offices or the beings or what they're about is pretty extensive, and it's not limited to a planetary correspondence or such, I believe, and they made that pretty clear. But other spirits very much, they do have a specific office and hour, and this has been proven in my experience as well. I'll try to ask them about something, and they're like, that's not my office, that's not what I'm about, or their answer is very wish-washy, or kind of it really almost circumvents to come back where it makes sense for their office. And I found those are the two kind of responses I get when I'm not dealing with the proper angel or the proper spirit for the proper office, which can correspond to its hour and day. And some of these spirits are very particular within a certain day, a certain timing, and definitely within specific aspects. They have a certain office or duty that they fulfill, and it's specialized. So yeah, I do think that for understanding certain things, the magicians, the people try to categorize or distinguish to make it understandable, but it's definitely not one all way or the other.
Right. And so now, in terms of this term magic having sometimes a bad connotation in some people's minds, do you refer always to your work as magic, or do you sometimes use a different word around different people, like theurgy, or you know what I mean, to try to get people to overcome any kind of bias they might have, a cognitive bias, just by using that term?
Yeah, especially when I was younger, I would change the reference or what people were asking about. I also do various forms of healing, and I used to work in an environment that was pretty conservative Christian, religious, this way, and somebody would get injured at work or have a massive headache or something, and I'd put my hands on them and do some work, and that would just say that I'm either praying for them or doing other things that would suit. But these days, I'm not too worried about the connotation of magic. In my other professional life, it's just not something that I talk about. It's only something that I'm visible for people who know me, who know my work in that world and seek me out that way. It's not an issue.
Right.
And I don't have too many people that are coming from outside the magical community asking me about magic. It does happen sometimes, and I'm happy to sit down and kind of explain. But yeah, theurgy, or exactly where this magic is coming from. Magic is something that from every religion that I've found, people work magic no matter what they call it. If especially if we're talking about the Catholics and such, it's rife with magic. And if you're asking the saints for something, or if you're praying on something to have something in your life and everything, they're going to call it something different, but that is a magical process. Asking a deity or somebody that you see as having some sort of spiritual significance, and asking them to intercede for something in your life, to change something in your life, is a magical operation, and it's something you see culturally and religious and otherwise. Of course, if somebody has a very exclusive religion and stuff, such as some forms of Christianity, they don't see it that way. It's miracle and holy work, theurgy, and it's only appropriate through their particular strand and everything, and that's a conditioning thing and to be expected. But it's a practice that you see world over in various religions of all kinds.
That's right. I mean, even some would argue that masonry is a magical art or science or whatever, because we have ritual, right? And which is done in a set way and with specific words. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think there's some magic going on, or theurgy?
Oh yeah, for sure. When I teach my magical courses, I basically, when I'm trying to give people a paradigm or a way of considering their own magical worldview, I break it down into three categories, and I break it down into liturgical magic, lodge style magic, and folk magic. And lodge style magic, where we have the Golden Dawn and the OTO and everything stemming out of people who masonry and other societies of this kind of structure. I mean, that's how it was formed. This is how it was practiced and still is practiced. And so, yeah, these rituals, the initiations, the creeds, the stepping into these official roles, and making these vows and declarations. These are all very magical acts, especially in the lodge style. And a lot of these things are blurred. You see it in the Golden Dawn and all systems, where liturgical magic is definitely mixed in with that, and so is folk traditions. And it just really depends on, especially nowadays, the lodge, the individuals, the members, what their focus is, and kind of where they'd like to take that. But yeah, initiatory rites, very magical processes, especially where the ones where there is a lot of death, rebirth, and these themes, these powerful themes that are found in individual magical lifestyles as well as groups. You can relate them to the shamanic journeys and various indigenous cultures and everything, where some of them get quite literally close to death before they go through that underworld and are reborn and have a connection to this other world.
So, Frater Ashen, do you feel that everybody is sort of surrounded by these invisible entities, whether it's angels or demons or daemons, and that we're all in relationship with them, whether we know it or not, and that perhaps one of the key differences in the work you're doing and other magicians is that you're trying to do that in a more intentional manner and have a more intentional relationship?
Definitely, and I think people get confused even on trying to identify or really classify the idea of a spirit or spirits being around and exactly what that means. It's hard for people to understand beings that are actually not fixed in any kind of visible shape or form, and sometimes not fixed in any kind of discernible location, which is very difficult for people to actually comprehend.
Mm-hmm.
And energies has become kind of a loosely new age use of terminology, but there are all sorts of things, even without speaking esoterically, but just psychologically, and how the mind works and how filter and discernment works, and conditioning, and all of these things. Even beyond spirits, there's a lot of things going on that human beings are not consciously aware of, they're not consciously processing, but are going on all the time, and they're aware of very, very little. And that's not even speaking of spirits, which are there and are very much in an active role and constantly doing things, but not like the movies, and not like a lot of ways that people would imagine. But there's very few people that have the capacity to really see and speak and have these dynamic interactions, even ones that wish to do so, because of the difficulty it is for most people nowadays to accept something like that, and to deal with it and to experience it, because it's not something that can ever be truly objective. These spirits, even in communication, even with using magical technologies such as circles and triangles and barriers to limit, or at least to better focus the levels of interaction between person and spirit. It's difficult for most people's minds to handle, because it is a very overwhelming experience. It's not like watching something on TV.
That makes sense. So, there are people that would argue that, it's not good to work with angels and, or to seek out contact with these entities, particularly religious people, right? We'll say it's, there's only one God and you should just pray to God and not work with these lower entities. What's your response to that?
It's an easy response, and anyone who has studied these, and kind of the why behind is a lot when you're looking to the history of magic, and also the history of various religions, specifically Christianity, Catholicism from the past. So magic was something that even before Christianity was feared, especially if people who were gifted, because it was a power. It was a strength, and it had capabilities, especially in people's beliefs, to know things that otherwise you couldn't know, and to cause things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to cause. And this generates fear, and especially fear for people who were in power. Historically, the magicians who practice from the grimoires, and the magicians who practice Solomonic magic in particular, were the people in power. They were the people who could read. For one, very few people could read in the ancient world, especially as we're talking about the 13th century, even on up to the 17th. I mean, gradually you had more people who learned to read, but it was still a very small percent. And among those people who could read were the clergy, and then you had the aristocracy, the wealthy, well-to-do, or royalty. And these are the people that, for one, had access to these books and could read them in the first place, and also had the means to practice what the grimoires entail. And it's very liturgical. It follows patterns, phrases, and things that the clergy do, and it even refers to the exorcist or the master in this way. So they were people of at least minor holy orders, if not major holy orders. And this is attested to over and over again to various grimoires that were attributed to certain abbots or people that were priests or such to begin with.
Right. I mean, one way I've thought about it is, these, angels or other entities are beings, just like humans are beings. And if you go by the logic that you can only talk to God or only work with God, and you shouldn't be working with any intermediary at all, then why even work collaboratively with human beings? Let's just go right to God. I can't talk to you. I got to work only with God. But yet we do. We work together to achieve goals, to do good in this world. You work to help a friend who's sick. You bring them stuff. You do things with your reality to try to improve the situation. So if you now have an expanded view of reality and you realize there's all kinds of things on invisible levels that are also real and part of our universe, why not work collaboratively with the whole system?
Yeah, exactly.
Ignorant of that.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of, I would say that a lot of, people nowadays that have said, don't pray or talk to anything but God it's a very, very modern Protestant view. It's something that really got going out after the Protestant Reformation, and especially even more so, I would say, in what I term American Christianity, where there really isn't, there's less and less acknowledgement about anything spiritual beyond their concept of God, and they don't really like anything in between. There might be angels and demons, but that's it. And even those are something that are kind of vague and referred to in a very removed sense. Mm-hmm. And and I think a lot of that is basically through fear, and it is not to say that it's not dangerous and that you cannot be led astray, and that people's lives cannot be dynamically and inextricably changed and altered from possibly the course that it was originally going. That is definitely a factor into dealing with these beings, and having interactions with them can for certainly be life-changing. And it really goes into one of those things that through my experience and even trying to open people up to some of these experiences, and why in the Bible the first thing that is read when an angel appears is "Be not afraid," is because it is rather terrifying to the senses, even for the angelic beings that are meant to be helpful. If people even read the Bible, especially in the older testaments and such, these beings are not, ladies and angels in white gowns and everything. They're embodiments of certain powers, and they're not people. They're not humans. They don't have the emotional and such dispositions that humans do at all. They are movers of powers for whatever that source is, and they enact upon whatever message as soon as they are told to do so. So obviously very terrifying for some people, and some of these angels, or their very nature is for very destructive ends. That's what their purpose is. Mm-hmm. And it is dangerous. It is something that if somebody has the knack for this and can experience that, it can be overwhelming and life altering at times, and is it has driven some people mad. It has driven people to enact and change their life in such a way that everybody else would really question their sanity and their purpose and the appropriateness for contacting such beings just through what they're witnessing of other people going through. There is that, and to say otherwise would be ridiculous. It's not all rainbows and shinies and happy things.
Sure.
they are powers, and for people who are choosing to draw in proximity to them, there's definitely risk factors.
Yeah, and we'll definitely talk about that. There's something else kind of came to my mind where, a lot of people believe like if you're a good person and you have a good heart, there'll be angels by your side just sort of naturally. And on the other side, and I'd like to know if you think that's true. And then on the other side of it, if you're a bad person and you got a bad heart and you don't have good intentions and you're doing magic to try to bring down angels to support you, would that be a lot more challenging because of your own personal nature? I mean, kind of think about those two dimensions, someone
Yeah.
who doesn't play with magic, doesn't know anything about magic, but they're a wonderful person, like a saintly person. They
Mhm.
might not need to work with correspondences. Those angels are
Yeah.
just all around them,
Mhm.
loving it. That might be the strongest correspondence in and of itself, to have an open heart.
I totally agree. And in my appreciation of people, and some people I've gotten to know, for one thing I can say is that not everybody needs to do this. And it's not, very few people I think have the capacity or that it would be beneficial or needed. And you're totally right. The people that are living the life and they get no proof, they see no miracles, they don't even get a hint of the spiritual world, but they're doing the good work anyway. I think I have more admiration for those people, and love the work that they do in the world more so. And yeah, I do think that they have support spiritually, even if they're completely oblivious or not knowledgeable about it and don't acknowledge it about it. They don't need to, and it doesn't need to
Yeah.
be. And for these angels and these beings too, they appreciate certain human actions, they do, but they're not. I think people will get confused that like they need to be seen or acknowledged by all people. They don't need that. They're not people. They don't need some sort of ego gratification of
Oh, that's
acknowledgement
really
that
interesting.
way.
Yeah, they
Um,
just work unknown, right? They don't care.
Yeah, and so I think it's perfect. Yeah, the people doing the good work that have no idea it's working exactly as it should be that way. They don't need anything else.
Hmm.
But yeah, people that have some severe personality disorders and struggling trying to contact the angels. If they're trying to force them to do things, I don't think they'll be able to get very far. If the angel somehow agrees on its own term to come into proximity with them, they're going to change that person's life, and where that person's going to be more or less forced or moved along by the universe um, to change one way or another, and that could be interesting too. So it's not something that I would be worried about, or if a bad magician trying to force an angel to do anything. Not that some angels cannot be bound, because they can, if somebody really knows what they're doing, but the likelihood of somebody achieving the not only the know-how but the authority to be able to do that and be completely unbalanced, usually those things don't go together.
Right.
So it's
Right.
not something that I spend any time worrying about.
Hmm.
But magic can be, and another warning why some you know, religious people would tell people to stay away from it, is because magic itself and spirits itself can be extremely unbalancing, and can be of a non-benefit for people. It can make things worse. Most definitely, it
You
can
can
make
lose
things.
your mind.
Yes, it can. Yeah, when you're opening up your senses, and it's not that you can't get your fingers burned, but it's like
Hmm.
you could say it's like other professions. I always contributed because I teach martial arts as well. Exposing violence to some people can make them stronger, more disciplined, and a better person, and basically um, cancel out internal conflict and make them a master of themselves. But for other people, exposing people to violence and to fighting and to other things can make them worse. It can bring out the worst in them and actually dissolve the already kind of crumbling personality traits that are within them. So it really does depend on the person, and what sort of things are going to be positive for them and negative. But you get most religious officials giving it a broad stroke of stay away from all of it, just in case it's bad and just in case it ruins you. And there's a lot of things you could say that about, for people and interests. So.
Mm. So, Frater Ashen, like if somebody wanted to begin a magical journey, and they were interested to do something, but they didn't know where to start, what would be like your explanation of the simplest operation someone could do to get in touch with some of these entities?
Well, if we're talking about evocation, and I get people coming to me all the time actually with this same question,
Mm.
and I usually tell them the same thing. Well, I'm like, first of all, I'm like, well, why? What is it your interest? And have you seen a spirit before? Have you encountered anything paranormal? That's usually the first thing I ask them.
Mm.
If they're coming at me, no, I've never seen anything before, but I really want to. I'm like, well,
Right.
not that it's impossible, but it's very difficult, because one of the cues that I see from people is that if they're meant to be doing this kind of work, if they're meant to interact with spiritual beings, they're going to have some sort of part in their mind that is unlocked for that capacity anyways. They're kind of born into it, and there's even magical writings that talk about the magician is born so forth from his mother's womb, and everyone else who assumes the function is unhappy. I recall that a lot because
That's a good one.
you do see that it's not that magic and abilities is not something that cannot be trained and developed. I've done that myself to a very great degree, so it is something that's trainable. But if somebody is coming at this, from nothing, I try to give them, well, I don't want you to disappoint you. You can try, but the first thing that I tell people to do before doing any kind of elaborate ritual or anything else is try give scrying a try. Well, what's scrying? Well, you're going to look into some sort of medium, a crystal, a mirror, a flame. There's even ancient texts in the grimoires of being able to scry with oil on your thumbnail and see spirits. So it really does have the capacity of the ability within the magician, and that will train the mind and attention. And I think if somebody's really meant for it, they'll give it a try. And even if nothing happens, if they keep going at it, maybe they'll get something out of it. But most people, they try it a few times, I'm not really seeing anything. And usually in the West too, because it's instant gratification, they're not seeing anything the first few times or whatever, so they quit and they move on to something else.
So when you're scrying, what are you looking to see? Are you looking to see like visual things, or are you more looking to get intuitions or insights?
It can be all of it in a person's capacity for interacting with spirits. When somebody asks me, what is it like talking to an angel and everything, and when I talk about it being overwhelming and not being objective, it's because multiple things are going on all at the same time, especially if you have the capacity. There's smells in the room that you never encountered before. There's an overall feeling that comes over you that's undeniable. It's a presence, and if nobody's felt what a presence is like before, it's very difficult to explain. It's something that, okay, this was an empty room and all of a sudden there's something here, and every sense of my body is telling me. You can hear things, you hear a distinct voice, but you get a sense that it's not vibrations coming off the air, but you can still hear it. It sounds nothing like the voice talking in your head. It sounds differently. The words are different. And then you see things when you're looking into a scrying apparatus. All of a sudden you might be looking at something, swirling, but all of a sudden your mind's drawn into, and it takes dimension, and it's clear, and you see this being, and it moves. It's not fixed. It's not like an optical illusion that is frozen because light or inconsistencies and
Right, it kind of has a life of its own.
yeah, it has a very interactive look. But you can go from talking to a face, and all of a sudden it's showing you a vision, and all of a sudden this vision hops in your head because it's trying to explain that point, and then it fills you with this feeling, this feeling that comes out of nowhere to convey another point. So it's communications on multiple levels. And often with angelic entities, it's going on all at the same time. And it's not, is there something there? The struggle becomes, how do I keep any sense of consciousness of myself and what I was going to ask, what I'm here for, because I'm so,
Overwhelmed.
yeah, enraptured in what the angel is conveying back.
Wow.
And this is different. It's very, it's very amazing, and it takes practice. I talk about it in my books where I looked in a black mirror for several nights, and for the longest time I saw it was like swirling lights and maybe some optical things, fuzziness, and then for no reason at all, I saw what looked like a photo negative of like a hawk flying sideways, and it looked basically like watching a black TV with photo negative white glowy bird flying suspended. It stayed in the center of the mirror, but I was able to look away and look back, and it was still there. I could kind of change where my head position was, and it was still there. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And that was a breakthrough. Where like, okay, this works. This is real. Now where can I go from here?
Wow. So this is a good segue into another question I had for you, which is about your craziest magical experiences. What were the big ones that you can remember that just blew your mind? And it sounds like you're the type of guy that's had quite a bit of those.
Yeah, we've had. I still have to say that the workings that my scryer and I did together are some of the most amazing, because we would see and experience these beings, and it would fill the entire room, and the things that we learned and how it changed us was just amazing. When we were getting into the archangels, ones that I'm associated with closely and I have the closest interaction is the Archangel of Jupiter, Sakiel or Zadkiel. And it was really neat because right after the first invocation, and I recorded these audibly so that word for word I got everything perfectly accurate for what these angels were saying and communicating to my scryer.
You recorded them?
I did. And that's how I got.
Not you saying what you think you're hearing, but the sound of the angel talking?
It's my scryer talking back what they're speaking to him.
I got you. Okay.
And yeah, a lot of these experiences were amazing, because sometimes we would see the same things, and even though I couldn't hear him because I wasn't enraptured talking to the angel, my scryer would be, but we would be able to go back and forth with this, and this is the interesting thing. So I just made sure that he repeated everything back that he was saying to me, and our experiences really followed. If people are unfamiliar, the experiments where we get Enochian magic, or the experiences of John Dee and Edward Kelly for their whole system, is the same kind of relationship that way, except in our case we could really, either one of us could act as scryer as needed. But for this experience, when I was calling the Archangel of Jupiter, the light intensified very suddenly in the room. We had a couple of candles going and such, but it was big, and you hear both of us gasp at the same time, like surprised, because it was just so it wasn't like a gradual increase of the light. It was like boom. And we both saw the exact, because I was like, do you see? And we were describing the exact way that the face of the angel appeared in the crystal, and was moving, and just the feeling that pervaded the entire magical chamber was just amazing. And this would happen especially with the archangels, where their office and what they were conveying would fill us. I always laugh about the experience with the Archangel of Venus, Anael, because as she's explaining her office and about loving every being, almost no matter what they did and everything, this feeling of genuine love, just, it pervaded both of us. And we're giving each other's hugs, like, man, I appreciate you, I love you, so much. And I don't know if
no ecstasy involved.
Yeah, and we're just acting like these two sappy guys, and my wife is waiting outside, and she's kind of laughing at us, but it was just joy and a genuine feeling that you cannot create artificially. It was just incredible and and it would last for weeks and through the whole house. And just that feeling alone, I would tell people, if I didn't get to see anything, if it was just feelings, it would be worth it.
Wow.
Because it was just life changing. I mean, it filled
Wow.
our entire beings, and something that you can't just express just through words, even if the
Right.
angel was, and they are very articulate, they're like poetically beautiful, but that feeling that accompanies what they're trying to convey is it's beyond words. It's indescribable.
Yeah, and I imagine once you have an experience like that, that's very profound, it probably becomes easier after that, because you're accustomed. You made it through it without losing your mind. You didn't freak out, and so when it happens again, you won't be as scared. And I feel like the beings don't want to necessarily. I mean, maybe some of them want to frighten you, but some of them, if they sense that you're not ready, they won't come because it would be too overwhelming.
Yeah, this is correct, and I talk about this in my book where it really is. We talk about an initiatory process, and for some of these angels, and both my scryer and I would talk about this afterwards, almost on an intuition level. They're unlocking certain things so that we can be able to speak to this next angel or this next being.
There you go.
We needed this experience first,
Right,
just to be able to call upon them.
Yeah.
Because some of these, some of the beings, and I'm still surprised that I did it, but we would call on Metatron, and we called Uriel was another one. Everybody thinks, especially like in the Golden Dawn, like it's this earth and very used to people angel, but it wasn't for us. It was very super celestial. It was a being that was alien in the sense of just not used to really dealing with human beings on that level and physical reality, because on some of these, both either myself or Scryer or both, I mean, I about lost consciousness during my mind was just, I don't know, maybe it got flooded, or it just couldn't understand the feelings and the presence of, it was probably even a part of that angel, but being that close, it was a bit too much, and we almost lost total control of the ritual because of just the feelings, and the presence within the room was just a bit too much. And like you said, it's not trying to scare us, or probably not even trying to overwhelm. It's just who they are, and even if it's a fraction of their being, being near to that and trying to understand. I don't know what was going on. We definitely reached our limit with some of those beings, even after several operations before.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but the Ouija board, which is, I don't think is taken very seriously as a tool. I
have a collection.
You do? Okay.
I have all kinds of antiques, and I have a collection, but they're novelties for me. It's just like, because it's in my field, but
right.
I have about quite a few other technologies and resources to use that are much more efficient than the Ouija board, so I never use them.
Well, the reason why I brought it up is because I had, oddly, some magical experiences using Ouija board when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
This was when I must have been probably like 13, like in the beginning of high school, and there was one girl that was a friend of mine, and she had a Ouija board, and we started using it, and we were just naive. We didn't know what it was about, really. We read the instructions and we did it. We were kids. And it worked for us constantly. And I ended up going over her house every weekend, and we would spend all day Saturday and Sunday doing the Ouija board. I'd spend the night at her house. We'd wake up and start doing Ouija board again. And we talked to all kinds of spirits, and even at one point I remember being at my house, and we were doing it, and my grandmother was there, and we were talking to some entity of some kind that was communicating and spelling things out, and he spelled something out, and I said what it is. I'm like, what is this? Because actually I think it first said like, I'm, your grandmother's father or something like that. And the spirit said the name, and she was like, oh my God, that's my father's name. And I was like, I didn't know anything about her father. And then he gave a nickname that he used to call her. And then she just broke down crying.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't believe it. It was just phenomenal. And we were all just amazed by it. I mean, eventually I stopped doing it because I think, I don't remember exactly, but there was one bad experience where, we had one spirit, and this is like straight out of the movies, right? And it was saying like 3 letters over and over, and it was really vigorously pulling our hands, like do, really strong. And I couldn't figure it out because I was reading the letters out of order.
Mm.
And I realized that, it's die, D-I-E. And then I was like, whoa, this is messed up. And I got like chills, and I was like, I am done. This is not a cool thing at all.
Mm.
But I was a kid.
Right.
I never really thought about it after that. I never even really thought it was weird that it was happening to us. But now as an adult, I look back and like, what the hell was I doing? Literally spending a full day doing a Ouija board with somebody. I mean, this is bizarre.
Well, you had the capacity, and that's how the board itself, and it has a horrible reputation just thanks to the movies and such alone. But it's one of those toy board games that used to be in all kinds of households, and for a lot of people, it was a novelty, and it was kind of neat sometimes, but didn't work. But yeah, the person has to have a capacity. Girlfriend probably had a capacity as well, and it's a tool. Yeah. And a lot of the religious fiction, it's bad, it's evil, and you almost associate that with the board, but it's not the board. It's a person. The board is a tool that can help bring about conversation. It's one of the things that can be used, and without proper know-how and everything. Yeah, you're going to get, eventually you keep doing it, you're going to get something nasty, because I tell people the spiritual world is like the physical world when you're talking about the various animals and things that are in it. It's rich with all kinds of things. There's all kinds of things around, and I mean that can happen, and that's why I got into magic in the first place. Especially with my father and stuff. He tries to stay away from it, but he's kind of like a magnet for things, and I have to go over every once in a while to his house or give him something to clear the space out, so he can get some sleep or whatever. But
well, it runs in the family, I guess. Have you done your genealogy research?
I still have not to do. I know we have on my father's side, there's Irish and Cherokee. We have kind of a long standing. A lot of the family still back east that way, and we've got records. They're very proud of, like Daniel Boone or something is in our family, but that's about as much as I know on my father's side. But I'll have to still do that. But it's something that travels down, and the world's that world's always around, and for the most part, even still, there's a lot of culture that tries to push it away, to push it at bay, to distract, to keep us distracted from other things going on, so we don't have to deal with it. And that's kind of the nature of our culture and how it's been.
So would you say that the work you're doing, is that theurgy or thaumaturgy, or do you do both?
I do both. I am a magician that deals with all kinds of beings and spirits. For many years, I just focused on the angels and archangels through the system, basically because I wanted to know them and to have an experience with them through drawing spirits into crystals. But even before then, how I got into ceremonial magic, like a lot of magicians, was through the Lemegeton and the Goetia, the first book of Goetia, which has the 72 spirits. Very, very popular, and did some very kind of rudimentary experiments that way, and got some results even with the little things that I was doing. So it went on from that to really get a handle, and then eventually become, I want to reproduce this magical experience exactly as it's instructed in the grimoire and see what happens. And that's kind of been my forte for a while. And so I'll talk to various spirits, but I do so in a very systematic manner, and making sure that I do it very carefully, and handle each evocation, especially if it's a spirit I don't know, to do that very carefully, and work and gather all the information about what it's about. Can it do anything for me? Is it going to be really helpful in my life or somebody else's life? And I'm to the point now where I do evocations on a fairly regular basis, and I do so for clients and everything too that come to me. If their situation seems warranted, there's a lot of people that come to me that I won't help because I think it's inappropriate to contact a spirit in order to get what they want. But for some people, I'm willing to help them, and I do this on a professional basis.
You mean like people that contact you because they really want this job or something, or they want a gold bar to appear in DoorDash on the doorstep?
Yeah, and Dr. Skinner, who's I'm a big fan of, and we've he actually wrote the foreword in my last book, and we converse quite a bit. And he's true in saying that magic historically, and it's the same today, if we're talking magic, especially Western magic, it is for practical reasons. And I tell people that come to me for that. Praying and doing holy work, I think that's very, very viable. But if you're doing magic, it is for practical reasons. It is to bring things, support for yourself, that if you're lacking or if someone needs help or for whatever reason, you can do so.
Right.
The people that think it's a get-rich-quick scheme, or that they can gain all this power without any effort, though, or they're addicted to a fantasy, it doesn't work that way. There's always work involved in the spirits. A lot can be achieved through magic, but it requires a lot of effort on the magician as well.
My only concern with even prayer, whether it's prayer or magic, to get certain things or to have my life change in certain ways, I feel like I might be getting rid of opportunities to grow by making my life easier. So I almost like it's counterproductive. Like on the surface, it seems like a good thing. Like, hey, I want this job, or I want sudden money to come into my life, but then I don't gain wisdom because I now don't have to struggle. So I have like a conflict in my own mind about praying for things. Usually now when I pray, I just pray to God to help me to become a better person. Help bring peace to the world. But I don't generally pray for unless I go on a plane flight or something, I do pray, please don't get me in an accident,
Right.
Avoid catastrophic stress. I do ask for that. I said, go easy on me, Lord,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, magic will not take out the learning process. And that's the thing that's kind of the reality versus the fantasy. Even if you're asking for things in your life, even if you're asking spirits, if you don't have the capacity to have that thing in your life,
right.
It's going to work it in a real way, which is it's going to move things around in your life so that you have the capacity to bring this into your life. People don't understand that. They think something's going to pop out. Things can come about very quickly, spontaneously, but the magic that really works and is transformative, even with dealing with spirits, is very much in that learning process. And I do have to say that. Yeah, it's not going to give you something, especially the angels. If you go to angels asking for things, they're going to be very much in the capacity of reworking your being and stuff in the world so that you're becoming that person, and then things can have room. But it's it's like other things. People will come to me for love, and I'm so lonely, I need somebody in my life, something. All right, well, are you going out meeting people? No, I don't like going out meeting people. I stay home and everything. Like, oh, you just want this person to show up on your doorstep and everything. They kind of get mad because they have an expectation of they want this, but they're not willing to have the capacity in their life to allow for the reality of another human being in their life. This is where magic and reality, or their fantasy, kind of butt heads. And in working with some of these clients, and love's kind of a big one, is you want another human being in your life and everything that we can work some things through Venus and everything, but it's going to it's going to get you out of your comfort zone. You need to be adaptable to have this capacity for love, for these Venus type energies that will draw. And this works as an equation. This isn't magic is not a something for nothing art. That is a fantasy. Okay. Nothing in the universe works that way. And magic especially.
You'd be breaking the universal laws if it did work.
Yeah, it's part of it. Magic is part of the big equation. That's something that it extends outside of it. And so in people, they get confused because they have fantasy ideas of what magic is.
Right.
But when you work with this stuff, you learn the reality. You really do learn what works, what doesn't, and what it takes to actually get certain things manifested in your life. And these beings will help you the easy way or the hard way, depending
Yeah.
on how much you're able to really harness these powers that are out there for change.
I think you might find some travel to Africa interesting. Have you ever been to Africa?
I haven't. I have a lot of clients there, and I'm fascinated, but I've never been there physically.
Yeah, because they have a lot of magic in their culture. They have sorcerers, and they do a lot of different magical things. I think it would be interesting for you to sort of exchange with some of these traditional magicians in these cultures. You might find certain things in common, certain things different, but I think it would advance your studies.
Definitely. And I've had the pleasure with dealing, it's been across the internet, but yeah, I know exactly what you're referring to. I've had the pleasure of interacting with some of the magicians and such there from
Yeah,
various African cultures. And I always feel honored because they come from a culture where magic has been ongoing, and
right.
unbroken since, I don't know, the dawn of man.
Who knows, right?
Yeah, so it's neat to be able to exchange and to see how they appreciate and how the different things work and the commonalities. So definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So, a couple last things I wanted to chat with you about is, you seem to make ceremonial magic instruments. Is that what am I calling them right? Instruments, or how would
Yeah,
you
it's,
call them?
implements, yeah, tools, weapons, and all kinds.
So you make the stuff I see posted on Facebook. You make those yourself,
Yeah, just pretty much everything. Not
even the
not entirely
metalwork.
everything, but a lot of the implements I make, I started becoming known for making these, and not because I even knew I could craft stuff. I was like, well, nobody sells or make these, so I need to kind of figure it out if I'm going to practice traditional grimoire magic, and I began that way, and I made everything from the Goetia exactly to its specifications, and um, also from drawing spirits into crystals, and from the almadel, these complex wax altar tablets, and so I was one of the beginning people to really try this out exactly how it's explained. And now I make tools for magicians and talismans. I make the talismans from the Key of Solomon and other grimoires. That's a really rewarding process because not only do I make and engrave them myself, but I consecrate them through the invocations of these angels and spirits that are associated with that actually consecrate them and empower them to work as a magical artifact. And so when I send that to the client, then they write back going, oh my gosh, since I received this, this happened, this is what I needed, and all of these amazing
Wow.
things that occur in their life. That's
So has
very
that become
rewarding.
your day job now, making those? Or
It's
do
one
you
of
still
those
have
things
to do
that
time
I
work?
have. Yeah, I have a separate job. I have
Okay.
a couple jobs actually, non-magical, but I could almost. It's been so consistent that I can almost do that full time.
Wow.
Um, it's been very rewarding. I would say even beyond the monetary um, assistance, but seeing what the changes that they've made in people's lives, and
Right.
some of it's incredible. Like I don't know what's going to happen, and they're like, "How did you do this?" I'm like, I didn't do that. I know how to make the thing, but I asked for the spirit to imbue them. So I don't take the credit of when these amazing things happen in their lives,
Right.
but that's what they're supposed to do. And seeing them function is just, I never get tired of it. I'm always amazed.
Yeah. No, I mean, really gorgeous work. I mean, I've seen some of your stuff that you posted, and it's like, boom, I'm attracted. It looks
Thank you.
good, really good craftsmanship, and just gorgeous. Um, so, what are these implements supposed to do? Like, what is the dagger or the sword for, and what's a magic wand? Like,
Gotcha.
what are you supposed to do with these things? What do they do?
Yeah, great questions, and have fun answering this. So they're all different things. But we'll go into one of the more popular ones is the black handled knife, and we can kind of easily go into the magical sword. So people ask me about magical implements, and again, I talk about correspondence. And when it comes to magical items, what you have is a first exercised and then consecrated compounded tool of correspondences. And what that is, these things are supposed to do is to give you a very strong conduit in connection to whatever celestial, astrological, or such power to help cause the effect of what you're trying to do. And for instance, the black candle knife is a very compounded tool for the Key of Solomon. You're actually going to see elements of both Mars and Saturn for them. And Mars and Saturn are the malefic and basically the controlling and harsh, the Gebura, the severity, powers within the universe that the spirits are very familiar with and very knowledgeable and react to. It's something for fun that people may not know, but within the magical world, if you look through lore, there's a specific material that most spirits cannot abide by. They do not like it. It's an anathema, and that is iron, and that is steel. If you look through Celtic lore and the Fae and the fairies and stuff, they do not like steel. There's, even when these cultures were not connected, there's lore and stories. There's a Fae that's in a river and stuff, and it keeps drowning children or people, or enticing them into the river. But when they threw a piece of steel in there, they were able to get rid of it, and so on and so forth. Look in Tibet and stuff in their magical tradition with the Fuwa, the iron stake that they would pin down demons with. A lot of correlations even between the East and the West. When you see a lot of things coinciding, to pay attention, and iron and steel is something that is very much within the spiritual world is an effective tool. Besides it, going through the years, like when the Iron Age, where swords and spears and stuff killed a lot of people as a weapon and very knowledgeable about being a weapon, spirits do not like steel. And if that steel is consecrated, if it's blessed or engraved with sigils, with names, in the Key of Solomon, there are holy names and have very specific sigils that are attributed to the Mars and Saturnian power. In some of the older texts, the black handle was a goat horn, and that's where you have the origin of the black handle knife. All of these things, for a magician who knows, they're like, oh, this is a correspondent magical weapon tool that has Saturn and Mars things, and this is going to make a spirit behave. So if you make a magical circle and engrave with, like in the Key of Solomon, the black knife, that's what it's for specifically. You're making a barrier from that steel on the ground that the spirits are not, even very aggressive spirits, are not going to trespass against that power. And these are energetic imprints, but you have to be a magician. You have to know, and especially when you witness these correspondence working, these tools start to make sense. The hazel wand, which Mercury, and it has to be cut on the first hour and day of Mercury on Wednesday. What is Mercury? Well, you're talking about communication and quick travel, and being able to call aerial spirits to a place quickly and be commanding and being able to communicate. It makes sense for people who understand the occult virtue of things. And it's all about correspondences. So the magical wand is an implement, it's a tool, it's a scepter of one, divine authority, especially if it's blessed, consecrated, engraved with the sigils, and two, has the authority and power through Mercury to be able to call aerial spirits generated by the mercurial powers within yourself through the tool concentrated to the actual aspect of Mercury that is recognized by the spirits to call them down. All of these things working in conjunction. So it's a magical recipe. It's a magical equation that magicians, if they know, and they know how to use it.
Do you have any, I'm off question, but do you have any Pisces in your natal chart by any chance?
Oh, I am a Pisces.
I'm
born on St. Patrick's Day.
So I saw that in your eyes. Yeah, I can see a lot of Pisces. Anyway, just asking.
Nice. Yep. I'm Pisces, born on St. Patrick's Day, and yeah, it's definitely strong in that aspect.
Yeah, and it makes sense, the attraction to magic and also sensitivity to emotions and forces that are subtle. and most people may be unaffected by, but you feel those things as a Pisces. So yeah, so it makes sense for your work. Um, so let's see. The last thing I wanted to ask you about is your books, and to kind of give folks that are interested, direction as to where they can find out more about you and your work and your instruments, your implements, your magical implements. So yeah, talk to us about your products.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, my first book, written quite a few years ago now, is called Gateways Through Stone and Circle.
Hmm.
Can find on Amazon. You can find both of my books on Amazon now, and that one is through Nephilim Press. And that book is basically my step-by-step instruction about how I do the art of drawing spirits into crystals. And it didn't even begin as a book. I didn't even know people would be interested in reading what I wrote. I actually wrote it as originally as a record for a few other fellow magicians who were kind of trying this experiment out. But I tried to do it as close to the grimoire, which is found in the Magus. It's actually a very small part about contacting the planetary archangels. So Michael, Raphael, Cassiel, Satya, all these angels of the planets are in there, and basically go through my understanding of magic. A little bit, I give some instructions on how to scry and how I learned to scry, and then basically how I make all of the tools that it describes. There's a few complex items. There's an ebony wand and an ebony pedestal and a gold disc and a crystal, and this kind of thing. And I explain how I made all those and how I use them, and then also the angels and how they appeared and kind of what their office is about through my experience. And then I share in the back the first experiment that I ever did contacting the Archangel of Saturn and what that experiment was like.
Oh, wow.
And that did really well. It still does very well. And my second book, like I mentioned before, is called Gateways Through Light and Shadow. And that one is, I think, 5 to 6 times the size of my first one. It's huge.
I just bought that book.
Did you not?
I started kind of skimming through a little section. I was like, oh, this is going to be a good one.
Yeah, and it came about because my friend, who he and I, as I was talking before, is very interested in Celtic Druidry. We actually formed a grove together years and years ago before I got into a lot of this stuff. And he stuck with the Celtic Druidic stuff, and I went into classical magic. And it actually began where using hypnosis, so I was doing this astral projection kind of formula that I've had people have these amazing kind of out-of-body experiences and such. And I was doing this experiment so under the assumption that he would speak with some of the Celtic gods or goddesses and have these experiences, but he happened to contact this angel, and I talk about it in the book. And this angel said that we had this work to do together, and that was important, that we basically needed to get on it. And I was like, wow, that's unexpected. I'm like, wow, really? Okay. And so I was like, how should I take him through this? He hasn't gone through Western magic. And it's experience of taking him through the 4 elemental planes, of us contacting ghosts and beings in a hospital that people were worried about, and doing some other experiments, and then finally going through all the 7 archangels, experiencing those together, and what in questions that we asked, and what he reported back as the scryer, and then Metatron and Uriel, and then we went through all of the 7 Olympic angels of the Ars Abatel, a different grimoire, and my house spirits, the being that is Masons find very interesting, Hiram, that is a spirit that is in a real human skull that resides in my magical chamber that I talk to, my wife talks to on a daily basis. And
I can see how that could attract Masons.
yeah, it's and his story is the next book that I'm working on. But that book is it contains some of the most amazing experiences that I've had. But I also have anthologies, Holy Guardian Angel, Ritual Offerings, and Liber Spiritum are 3 other books that I have sections with other authors in that I think all of those are still found on Amazon.
Okay.
But besides that, yeah, finding Frater Ashen Chassan on Facebook is probably one of the easiest ways. I do have a blog, but I'm just not good at keeping up with it. It's called A
Yeah,
Magician's
I've
Workhouse.
had those kind of blogs myself.
Yeah.
You get started, you get excited, you post a couple things, and then you're busy.
Right.
Yeah,
But yeah.
cool. Well, this has been very enlightening. I want to thank you, Frater Ashen Hassan. I did it right that time.
That works.
All right. For coming on. I really enjoyed listening to you, and I wanted to have a chance to talk to you. And I think a lot of people will be interested to hear from you. What I'll do now is just study some more, and then we'll get you on a show in some months. I'm actually moving to Ethiopia at the end of this month. I think I might have told you that.
Mm-hmm.
And so for work, but I'll continue the show from there. Internet connection, we could have some problems once in a while, but that's why this isn't live. So I can edit afterwards. But yeah, I'd love to have you back on, and we can go deeper as I learn more, if you're interested.
Sounds great. Yeah, it was a pleasure talking to you and being on. So I appreciate it.
Great, brother. Thank you so much. Have a blessed day.
You too.
All right.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Cheers.
Mm-hmm.
Bye-bye.
Bye.